I am so happy to be joined today by my very talented friend from No Gimmick Gear. It's Lori Gassie. Lori, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations.
Hey, Phil. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with the obvious. How did you end up starting designing pro wrestling gear, and how long ago was this?
Oh, okay. So it first started with Max Caster. He is the person that we can thank for the origination of this business. I was originally a costume designer in New York City for a lot of circus, burlesque, figure skating, dance companies. So I would do a lot of very athletic, stretchy costumes for different performances. And one day I received an email from Max Caster saying, "Hey, I see you do a lot of cool costumes. Do you ever do wrestling gear?" And I answered honestly, I said, "No, I haven't, but I have a degree in design. I've been doing costume design for 7 years. So I think I could do it if you're open to meeting about it." So Max Caster and I met up at a Starbucks on Long Island, and we had a chat about what he was looking for. He was interested in getting some wrestling tights at the time, and that was back in February of 2015, and we've been making gear ever since. So it was really great because he was really open and communicative about what he needed, in terms of how he wanted them to fit and function. So I worked out all the design kinks with him, and he went to one of his shows. He was an indie wrestler training with Creative Pro at the time on Long Island. So he went to a show, performed in them, and somebody was like, "Hey man, where'd you get your gear? That looks really good." And so he passed along my information, and I got a phone call from Isaiah Wolf, who was from Warriors of Wrestling, and it just kind of spread from there. So, people would go to a show, perform, and then next thing you know, it kind of branched out from there as more people got connected and saw it. So that was the beginning.
And Max is such a big deal now, being in AEW, and you've been now consistently designing his gear for the most part for what 7 years now?
Yes. So his very first set of in-ring gear outside of training purposes was made with me, and we've worked together ever since. I don't think he's ever worn anything from anyone else. So, at the time he was going under the American Bad Boy, and then his gimmick changed as he was in the indies to the Tweener. And then as he progressed and moved into AEW, he became, Platinum Max as part of the Acclaimed. And so I've kind of seen him through and grow through each of those transitions. And it's just been really fun to kind of help develop his character over time for the last 7 years and kind of really fine tune it into what we see today each week.
And I was excited for you just when I heard Taz kind of mentioning how cool his gear looked on the air one week. And I was like, you know what? I know who made that.
It's always nice when one of the announcers or commentators makes a comment about the gear, just because they see it all. They see gear from all different makers, all different designers, and so when you get a little shout out, it's definitely nice to hear.
So do you still do all that other design, or is it a lot of wrestling now and a lot of other stuff kind of on the back burner, or what's kind of like your everyday looking like?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I was sort of doing a little bit of both. It was a very gradual transition where as of 2015, I really only worked with Max Caster and a few others. And then as the years progressed, more wrestlers would kind of come in as clientele, and I would still balance it with the dance, theater, figure skating, circus. But as No Gimmick Gear has really grown, I've had to put a lot of focus and also hire a few more people to really be able to expand and just kind of really drive the focus there. So this year, so far, we've done 132 sets of gear. And then last year we did 187, which I was pretty proud of. So we'll see where we end up as our total for this year. But it's definitely, the wrestling clientele has increased over time. And some of those other forms of entertainment have kind of, become a little bit less of what we do.
And it's interesting that the number kind of went up coming out of the initial part of the pandemic too, as independent wrestling started to reemerge, because there wasn't a lot of it going on 2 years ago. Also,
yeah, I actually was giving that a lot of thought back to 2020. And I thought, what really did 2020 look like? Because I got really nervous that, oh, there's not a lot of live entertainment. There's not going to be a lot of shows. But thankfully, we were still able to kind of serve lots of our customers because so many of them are on television. And I know a lot of the companies sort of operated in a bubble, and different states and cities were affected with the pandemic at different times. So I do feel like we were able to still kind of hit pockets of wrestlers in different places. But, we were able to do 123 sets of gear, kind of a little bit lower than what would have been, best. But, 2021 really was a strong year. And I think, we're on track to have another great one.
Well, congratulations on all of that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Was there a moment where you kind of realized that this is a viable business option for you?
So 2 years ago, I started making gear in 2015, but about 2.5 years ago, I decided to create No Gimmick Gear, the brand. I had always just been doing it as Lori Gassie, the costume designer, and I decided that my social media, my website was a little bit confusing. So if wrestlers wanted to come and find more information, they were sort of having to sort through my other types of costume design. So they would be looking at figure skaters or theater shows and going, ooh, I'm not so sure, like, is this the right place to order? So I created a separate website about 2.5 years ago and separate social media. And that's where like the No Gimmick Gear brand came about. So as I was sort of kicking off that brand, I started following a lot of independent wrestlers as well as ones that I work for and ones that they wrestle against. And as I started to follow and dig deeper into like, oh, who are they going up against this week and what company or promotion are they working for? And I would start to look into each of those independent companies and promotions. I was like, wow, there's so many people with this one. There's so many people with that one. And as you keep digging, the web keeps growing and growing. And I thought, wow, there's definitely demand for it. There's enough wrestlers out there that, this is going to be very doable and, sustainable.
And then it just seems like the quality of your work is what keeps it going. The word of mouth, in addition to people just realizing, hey, this is good stuff. That's how you grow a business, and it's just awesome. Can you give us a bit of an idea of what the creative process is like for you when a wrestler comes to you and says, "All right, Lori, I need new gear." What happens?
So there are sort of kind of two options. Some people come in with a really strong idea of what they have in mind. Some people will come with like a sketch that they've drawn or maybe their friend or something, and with a basic idea of what they're looking for. And then I kind of just help them fine tune and select fabrics to really help that vision come to life. And then a lot of them will just say, I need new gear. What do I do? And that's the best, because that gives me an opportunity to really get to know that wrestler and hear who their character is, their storyline, where their character is going to be going. So if they're local, I have them come by the shop. And if they're not, we set up either a Zoom call or a phone call. And I like to hear the backstory. I like to hear where they're going. And then we talk through like what pieces really function best for their body type. Not everybody is built the same. So some people fit or feel more comfortable in certain types of gear than others. So we really talk through the overall fit and function of what they want to wear. And then I start creating sketches. So I start with some sketches and select the fabrics and send those over through either text or email, and we start fine tuning from there. So if they'd like some changes, I'm always happy to accommodate for that. But it's really, to me, getting to know the wrestler and who do they need to be when they step in that ring so that they make the best impact on their audience as possible. I always like to ask them, if somebody has never seen you wrestle and they know nothing about you, what do you want them to think the moment you walk in, before you've ever opened your mouth and said something, before they've watched a promo, before they've seen any of your moveset? As you enter the ring, what should their first reaction be? And I really like to get a sense of of who that is, so that way we can bring it to life, through fabric.
And with that process, is there any, like, do you recognize any crossover between kind of the other stuff that you were doing and designing for pro wrestling? Because I feel like, if you look at stuff like, even like theater and stuff like that, it's the person is playing a character, and really in wrestling, the person kind of has to be the character. And I think that's probably the biggest difference. Like, is it kind of the same approach that you take if you were designing for something else?
Yes, I definitely think it's the same. And that, I feel like, is what has really helped me transition well into designing for wrestlers, just having a background in designing for different characters. So when I was designing for theaters or circus performers or drag performers, I would either work with the director or the producer for those shows and really talk to them about, okay, what is the purpose of this character? What is the mood that they need to set? What is their overall aesthetic? And really developing that so that the audience understands it immediately, because they need to be able to see it the second somebody walks out. And that's really the same for wrestling. So having a background in really developing and bringing characters to life through costume design, I think really helped me transition for wrestling.
And then the difference probably in wrestling would be that in wrestling, the director that you're dealing with is actually the wrestler themselves, because they kind of have to be in charge of all their movements and what they're doing. So
absolutely
fascinating. How long does it take for you to get from square one to the finished product, and really what skills do you need?
So every order is different. Every order is just super customized. So some will definitely take longer than others. For some customers, we need to order specialized fabric, like customized prints. For example, somebody really wanted an Argyle print that just was not available at the stores or anywhere online. So we custom made it by designing it in Adobe Illustrator and then getting it printed. So that process, if you need custom printed fabric, takes several weeks for us to be able to get that from our supplier. But we've had people really have a super important match where I've been able to hustle it and get it out in 2 or 3 days. And that's certainly not my favorite way to work, because it's pretty pressure filled. But for really special big matches, we can make it happen. But I will say most of the process from start to finish, it takes us usually a few days to get your design together and really iron out the details of your fabric, the overall sketch for it to make sure that you're happy with it. And then getting it made usually takes about a week in terms of like physically sitting there, cutting it, sewing it, and getting it made. We do obviously have a lead time that leads into that. So if you call an order tomorrow, it won't be ready in 1 week because we have other clients to serve first in our queue. But it takes about a week usually when we're working on something. And the specific skills is definitely in creating the pattern that your garment gets cut from. So most people think you just kind of start cutting fabric and stitching it together, but a lot of what makes something fit really, really well is in making the template or paper pattern that it gets cut from. So getting the proportions of the body right. And I have a degree in design, and that's thankfully what I learned a lot about, was getting the proportions of your body right, getting it to fit really well, translating your body measurements to that pattern that we cut it from. So that's really where a lot of our specialization and skill set comes from, is like really nailing that, taking your body measurements and translating it into the proportions on the pattern so that it cuts and lays really nicely on your body.
That kind of leads into what I was going to ask next, which was, kind of to you, what makes quality pro wrestling gear? But it sounds to me like it's a lot of the functionality, it has to work. And then, obviously the look needs to too.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of people out there that can sew really proficiently. There's so many tailor shops or, family members or friends that have a sewing machine and can sew really, really well. But that doesn't mean that things always fit really well. So to me, quality is not just in, is it really sparkly and fun? Of course we can do that. But I think to me, the quality is really in the craftsmanship of the fit and making sure that it fits really nicely. So really taking your measurements and getting them. We don't sell like a small, a medium, and a large. We definitely take a lot of measurements and make sure that we're really getting an accurate fit. So that way from a distance, on camera, you absolutely look your best. So to me, like the quality of the fit as well as the craftsmanship and the sewing is really, to me, what stands out.
I kind of have a sense of this, having talked to you, not for the purpose of this podcast, but what is your fandom of wrestling like now that you are so heavily involved in pro wrestling?
So like in the way that I am a fan, or
Yeah.
in the way that people are fans of us?
Your fandom of wrestling itself, because you've had to now be watching so much of it and kind of really consuming, a lot of what you do.
Absolutely. So it has changed dramatically. When I first started with Max Caster, he would invite me because I was like, oh, I would love to see, a show. I'm so curious to see what it's like and how it looks. And so, I would go to local indie shows just to go and watch him perform, and other people here locally through House of Glory or Creative Pro, Wrestle Pro, were the shows I could really go and watch in person. But then as several of my clients and wrestlers started moving up and getting signed contracts at other places, I really wanted to make sure that I was staying on top of who they're going to be competing against, because I don't want to design anything that looks similar to somebody that they might be in a match against. So, I've really been dipping my toe in a lot of waters, watching Impact and AEW and WWE, NXT, just to really kind of make sure I know who's out there, who's wearing what, so that way, as I work with clients at each of these different promotions, I'm familiar with whatever he's wearing. So, but it's been a lot of fun, because then I get to see just, so many different types of wrestlers, different sets of gear, and just really like open my eyes to a bunch of different storylines and wrestlers that are out there. But it's, I definitely had to learn a lot. There's so much content out there that you could never run out.
And just picking your brain about it, it was so fun for me to discover, just being able to kind of talk to you about wrestling. And you actually, I wrote this down a little bit ago, like Lori's knowledge of indies in Northeast is better than mine. And I feel like I know a lot. And like you were hitting me with some promotions and some wrestlers, and I'm like, I heard that one before, but maybe not really. But you have to immerse yourself in it. And it's such, like you said, it's such a large thing to kind of, like, you can never actually fully get your arms around pro wrestling.
No, not at all. There's so many just in the Northeast alone. Creative Pro was where my first customers started, and therefore I have a nice relationship with a lot of their wrestlers. But then there's just, House of Glory is just down the road. There's Technique to Training is a few blocks away. The Fallout Shelter is also located here in Queens, near where I am. And that's just within like a 4-mile radius. So you start getting into New Jersey and all the rest of the Northeast, there's so many schools and different promotions everywhere that, it's endless. But it's been a lot of fun to just meet people and see the different connections as wrestlers from one city or state, cross boundaries and cross borders to interact and wrestle against other people. So I always love when, I get 2 sets of gear in the ring at the same time, from an unexpected matchup.
Yeah, I've noticed that a couple of times of stuff of yours too, and that's just with television. Being able to follow that too. But you seem to approach it so respectfully, and I think that's probably what people appreciate most about kind of the way that you do your business. Because I feel like wrestling is, if you give it the respect that it deserves, you generally do. You do generally get it reciprocated too. So, did you find yourself getting into the shows though, like when you were first going to them, like and thinking to yourself, what world have I just stepped into here?
Definitely. And what's hard for me is I understand that there are heels and faces, right? Like you're supposed to hate some of them, you're supposed to love some of the others just based on their persona. But if I made your gear, I don't care how mean you are. I really want you. I want you to win. So, I sometimes find myself at the shows really on the wrong side of the crowd, where everybody else was rooting for the face. And I was just like, really pushing hard for the wrong person, because I was like, they look amazing. Yes to that. But it's been really fun to just see, everybody really hone their character and really live it. But it's been a wild ride, that's for sure.
I was trying to compile a list of wrestlers that I know of who I've seen your gear on, and I think it's pretty good, but I'm sure there's more. And this is mostly just TV or shows that I've been to. So you got Max Caster, Chris Statlander, Private Party,
Yep.
Rosemary, Idris Enofe,
Yes.
Brooklyn Barlow, Thea Hale, George Joel, Deanna Perrazzo, Nikita Lyons, Sloane Jacobs, Lady Frost, Victor Benjamin, Red Velvet, Kayla Sparks.
Yep.
Keith Youngblood. These are the ones where I was like question marks. Ken Broadway.
Yep.
Clara Carreras.
Yes.
I think those are all the ones I've seen either on TV or in person between all of them.
Yes.
I was going to see if there was any I was missing of people would see on TV, and who, basically where can people check out examples of your work if they're looking to check it out?
You should check your local indie shows, because it's important to support them. I certainly don't have gear in every indie promotion that's out there, but there are a lot of them. But yeah, so on AEW, we've got several people. I also now work with Athena Palmer, the Fallen Goddess, and occasionally Daniel Garcia, not always, but sometimes we work with him as well. Jessica Havoc in Impact is also another great one. But yeah, so we've got a lot of stuff on NXT, a lot of stuff on AEW. It's really cool to see a lot of people on Dark and Dark Elevation. So I'll get to see them in their indie promotions, but then get called up into Dark and Dark Elevation to see them really shine and get like a much bigger platform. You can see a lot of our performers there as well. So, but if you really want to see examples, I think our Instagram page is probably the best place to really like do some digging and see where everything is.
I was gonna say too, it's so cool when a new wrestler's gear comes out. You kind of have that reveal on social media. You kind of let them shine a little bit, but then you're like, oh, by the way, if you liked this, and like you're like the most supportive person to them in their career. Like they're purchasing gear for you. Obviously, it's a business transaction, but you're also getting each other's words out, and the positive nature of the posts is totally it's infectious, but it's also real. It's you.
Oh, it's so much more than a business transaction. Anytime I mail gear to somebody that's out of, not local to me, I always feel like I'm, mailing one of my children, in a box where I'm tracking it every day just to make sure it gets there safely, and, check in on it once it arrives. But I definitely like for the wrestler to have the first kind of glory of that debut. So I never share any information, no sneak peeks, no nothing about their gear until they've had the opportunity to wear it. I really like for them to get to come out and really just like have that moment in their new set, like looking their best, feeling their best, and really surprise their audience with something new. And I like to share it after that, give them that first moment, and then I'll start proudly, the proud mom, that's running behind, cheering everybody on.
It's like the pro wrestling version of like a red carpet reveal. So who are you wearing? I'm wearing No Gimmick Gear. And I love finding the little sort of Easter eggs in your work. I mentioned to you, Max Caster wearing a Road Dogg inspired gear set in the Acclaim's dumpster match on Rampage against the Gun Club, obviously related to the WrestleMania 14 dumpster match between the New Age Outlaws and Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, which I didn't even pick up on when I watched the match until I went back and I saw your social media. I said, oh, I know where she's going with this. Do you enjoy looking back at other classic looks like that and being able to put kind of your own spin on it? I got to think that's kind of its own kind of fun.
I think it's really fun. It's very different than, because that's not always about the wrestler. It's sort of a combination of like interpreting the wrestler who's going to be wearing it mixed with tributing where that point of origination is. So, taking that original Road Dogg look, but glamming it up so that it really fits Platinum Max. Because, Road Dogg had a little bit more rugged fabrication and everything, but Platinum Access to come out looking very shiny. So, we changed it up just to make sure that it really suited him. But I really like it because then it gives me the opportunity to go back and watch some older matches and really see like some of the older history of the industry and, just get a little bit more well-versed in that. So we've done some cool tribute stuff like Terry Funk and Jeff Jarrett, which has been really cool, and also Mr. Perfect. So sometimes people will send me old video clips or old images of favorite wrestlers that they're like, oh, I just loved him growing up and I just want to pay tribute. How can we kind of do a mashup that is in honor of this former wrestler as well as like that still captures my personality. So it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. And what inspires you creatively as you're doing this?
So I really enjoy looking at a lot of high-end fashion. I know that doesn't always translate really well into wrestling gear, but I really love to look at like trends in high-end fashion, in swimwear, in like gymnastics costumes, and a lot of like circus things. So, that's where a lot of my background came from anyway. And so I still follow a lot of performers that work in those arenas. And so I really like to look and see what other industries or performance artists are doing, and just to like see different styles that haven't really been used before, or used as much with wrestling. So I really like to look to other like costume and performance types to get some inspiration that we can kind of translate into wrestling gear.
All right, we're going to move on to something we call the 3 count now. It's going to be 3 quick questions and your answers to them. So if you were a wrestling character, what would your gear preference be?
We talk about this at the shop all the time. I have 2 coworkers that are with me each day, and I love them dearly and couldn't function without them. But I would definitely be Spandex Queen because we use spandex all the time in a variety of forms, and I would definitely be Spandex Queen, the Queen of Spandex. That is who I am.
Any particular color?
Oh, I would probably be an emerald green. I think the color suits me well, and I feel like it really fits my aura as well.
Very nice. So next question: Macho Man Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels, too much or fashion icons? What do you think?
I mean, it's wrestling. I'm going to say icons. I think like in wrestling, like, is there ever too much? Like everything but the kitchen sink, right? So I'm going to go with icons.
Yeah, I mean, Macho Man had so many different unique looks. And then, as I got older, he sort of moved to the cowboy hat and the fringe, and everything got a little weird from there. Shawn Michaels, the chaps, like all sorts of stuff going on with his gear over time.
But it keeps people talking. If you think about Lady Gaga or Madonna, they always have these eras, and sometimes they were maybe a little questionable. Maybe that wasn't like the Ray look, but it got people to have a conversation. It kept them relevant, and it was just really fun. It gives you something wild to look forward to.
I think I want to use that in the future. The Macho Man Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels are the Madonna and Lady Gaga of pro wrestling fashion. I think that's maybe the best takeaway so far. Oh my goodness. Is there a wrestler last question, is there a wrestler whose look you've seen and just said, oh man, that is just totally cool, even if it wasn't your creation necessarily?
Definitely. I'm just trying to think of who, one of the wrestlers, and it's actually somebody that you had on, but Rhea Ripley. There's something about her aesthetic and her style that I just think she looks so cool every time she comes out. So I'm not working with her. I would love to. I'd be happy to. But every time I see her come out, I'm just like, yes, you have really like nailed it. And I feel like she just gets better and better and better every time she comes out. Like her wrestling is on point, but her look is so good.
Well, Lori, thank you so much for joining us today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. This was one I was looking forward to doing for a while. I'm so glad that we did this. I don't know that you do a lot of these, so I was very, very happy that you made some time for us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me on. It was great to talk to you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.